I feel that I don't talk too much about this franchise when actually it is one of my favorites at the moment. We are going to focus on Grey Sheep in this episode because I have a lot to talk about this franchise and I want to share it with you. So let's kick off this episode of SEIYUU Lounge. Welcome to SEIYUU Lounge, I'm your host Vanessa and we are going to talk about Grey Sheep. This is a franchise that I like a whole lot. Although I don't speak, or at least I don't talk about it too much, this is a franchise that I love a ton. In this episode, let's cover a little bit what we have in this franchise, why I love this franchise, and everything else in between. I feel that I've already talked about this franchise before, but still, I need to talk a little bit more because it is quite amazing. For more information about Grey Sheep, the franchise, you have an extended article about that on THTFHQ.com. Just need to check Grey Sheep and you will find, especially if you go back to 2023, when this franchise started, you will find the master article in which I cover everything about each character as well as the new characters in the franchise. So, in this case, Grey Sheep is a franchise that kicked off in 2023. It's quite an ambitious project. It is created by Love and Art, which it's no longer their full-on name. They have changed the name of the label, but they are part of the same label that created, or at least the same publishing company that created the B Project franchise. In this case, you have a story focused on conflict and collaboration between a special force called GOAT and a vigilante group known as BAD SKUNK. And this was something that really has a sort of a sci-fi setting, which is something really interesting for those that enjoy that type of story. I for sure love sci-fi stories, although I'm not following this story closely like many of you or some of you may be, but still, I like sci-fi stories, so this is something that if I find the time to dedicate to the lore, I will dedicate to the lore because I like sci-fi. But this is in the far future in some capacity. There is a sort of a social unrest, there is a special police force which is comprised of the members of GOAT, as well as a sort of a vigilante group called BAD SKUNK. They are sort of in the slums or in the dangerous neighborhoods and they really rule that part. And they sort of have to collaborate to sort out the problem that they have in their city. This is the simplified version of what this story is about. Then when it goes to the groups and then when it goes to the music, it was quite interesting because, for example, the first two releases that the Grey Sheep franchise had, you knew right from the start that the vibes were going to be super different. You have the law enforcers and you have the vigilante group that is more like a gang than, I would say, a vigilante group. But still, you have both sides and you would think, when you think about the police, or let's say in this case, in this setting, you will think about something that is orderly, really well organized. And it is exactly what GOAT presented us with in their first two singles, especially the ones released in episode 1 and episode 2. They are incredibly thorough, which was surprising. I was not expecting that type of music coming from that group. I was expecting something a bit more intense, but intense in a way that you could feel order, but not order in the sense of everything is harmonious. But they went with the focus on things sounding harmonious. And what you have there is a really, really chill, sort of smooth sound coming from them. It's a sort of a smooth EDM sound that you will enjoy for sure, and with awesome vocals on top. On the other hand, when you go to BAD SKUNK have a slightly different vibe, or at least in episodes 1 and 2, their vibe was slightly different. In episodes 1 and 2, they had a really intense, aggressive, rock-driven sound. And this was something that immediately captured my attention, and it is partly because Makoto Furukawa is leading this group on vocals, as well as his character is leading the grassroots vigilante group, but it is something that worked super well. And for me, I felt this is going to be massive because you have this interesting contrast between the thorough, orderly sound, which sounds harmonious, which is, let's say, it's the main goal of that group, GOAT, that police force, to have order and to have harmony and say goodbye to social unrest. When you go to BAD SKUNK, you can feel the high stakes, the grimy, shady side of, let's say, even the underbelly of the society. You can feel it in their music. especially in episodes 1 and 2. Things, however, changed a lot when you go to episodes 3, 4 and 5 or even 6, in which their sound evolved a little bit. On 3, they still have, let's say, most of their sound intact. Not many changes, but already with lineup changes, or at least lineup additions to each group. And these sort of veered towards episodes 4, 5 and 6, changing things around. And when I say changing things around, I was completely caught by surprise. And this is mainly the reason why we are having an episode about Grey Sheep, because I was really sure that we would be getting GOAT still with music that is super smooth, loungy and everything else in between, and then we would continue to have BAD SKUNK with that aggressive, rock-driven, sort of incisive sound, but things change around completely for the best, although it's still a big surprise, because when I listened to Grey Sheep on episodes 3, 4, 5 and 6, they shifted their sound around. It feels almost as if they traded places with BAD SKUNK, and now they have a rock-driven sound, occasionally a ballad, but a rock-driven sound, which fits with, if we think about these following a story, which I'm not following that story, so if you are a big fan of this franchise and you are following the story, you can fill in the gaps, and perhaps you can help me in the comments by telling me why the sound changed between episodes 3 and 4 for all groups in this franchise. But you notice the difference on episode 4, in which GOAT goes towards a rock-driven sound and BAD SKUNK goes towards a disco-driven sound. Now, when you think about disco music, you think about lively people having fun, but also some decadence. So it fits in some capacity the underbelly of society yet again. Although, for a group that started with such an aggressive sound and aggressive performance on the vocal end, it was kind of a surprise to find BAD SKUNK going for such a funky, fun and groovy sound. But then again, the nightlife is something that makes sense underground, in the underbelly of the society. Also, it makes sense in all senses. But in this specific case, if you were going to pin it to a specific side of the conflict, you will pin it on the underbelly of the society. That's the decadence. That's where people go to relax in the midst of the chaos. On the other hand, GOAT goes towards a more rock-driven sound, which I enjoy a ton, and a ballad, which has been a surprise so far. But yeah, you have changes in their sound, and I found that these, while I loved the idea of having BAD SKUNK sticking to a more aggressive sound and have GOAT sticking to a more ethereal sound, let's say, I actually like to see these kinds of changes that keep me on my toes and also that bring variety to the franchise, because you were expecting for them, especially if you are a fan of 2D groups and you have been a fan of many 2D groups, you already notice the patterns whenever a group appears. If they look tough, their music is always going to sound tough. If they look rather soft, the music is going to sound soft. And you will know that you can count on them to always sound like that, because usually what they look like is what they give you in terms of the music. At least that's the majority of 2D music projects. The groups usually reflect visually the type of music that they perform. You can tell by the vibes because, well, the interpretation of the character art is actually pretty well done and matches perfectly with the sound that the groups usually have. Not all, but the majority. So when you look at this and you think, oh, BAD SKUNK is always going to be a group with aggressive music, with really rock-driven sound, and although I love some SEIYUU, I may not like their music, maybe you thought like that. Or maybe you thought that, well, GOAT's music is a bit too soft for my taste. Maybe, even if I like the vocals, maybe it's not really my thing and I lean more towards BAD SKUNK. Now, they twisted things around and the script is completely off the charts in the terms of BAD SKUNK are performing music that I would say GOAT would perform, and GOAT is performing music that I would say BAD SKUNK would perform. So they are now performing each other's styles and sound, and in some way it works. So it is keeping you on your toes. So if you were expecting them to stick with just one music genre and just one vibe throughout, you are not going to get this in Grey Sheep. They are changing things around. But not changing things around in the sense that you feel, oh, they don't sound like them. They still sound like them. BAD SKUNK still have that edge to them, mainly because Makoto Furukawa sounds like he has smoked 1 or 2 packs of cigarettes in his performance. It's super rough, his performance. He sounds almost like Tatsuhisa Suzuki back when he was performing with Old Codex at times. And when you go to Grey Sheep, you have a really soft sound as well, mainly because you have Kentito there, but also many others that have amazing vocals in there. So when you go to the groups, and this is something that I was avoiding up until now, we have 2 groups, as I already told you. We have GOAT, we have BAD SKUNK. In terms of the music, and especially what I felt about these franchise when they started, I really enjoyed the sound that BAD SKUNK had. They were aggressive, unapologetic, and rock-driven, which is something that usually captures my attention, especially if well done, in my opinion, once again, because well done for me may not be well done for you, so that's subjective, but at least those are elements that will initially grab my attention and make me want to check the music out. GOAT had a really soft, ethereal sound that almost felt like it would belong, or at least it would have shades of Anthos from the Hanadol franchise, which is something that I like a whole lot because GOAT also has 3 members that are with Anthos, although the group is no longer around. So this was sort of, for myself, it was a treat because I was finding them together again in a group. And it was kind of interesting. So in GOAT, in terms of the vocals, I'm not going through the names of the characters. You can find that in the link that will be linked in the description of this episode, or you can check THTFHQ.com for more on the project, as well as more on each single, as well as the reviews that have dropped recently. So, we have on vocals Seiichiro Yamashita, we have Kentito, Yohei Hazakami, Shogo Sakata, Tatsumaru Tachibana, and Shun Horie. In this case, Shogo Sakata, Tatsumaru Tachibana, and Shun Horie are new additions to the franchise. They joined around episode 3. Then when we go to BAD SKUNK, we have Makoto Furukawa leading the way because, yeah, he is leading the way. Then we have Kentaro Kumagai, we have Shunichi Toki, we have Yoshiki Nakajima, Kohei Yamasaki, and Yuichiro Umehara. So in this group, we sort of have Sir Vanity on vocals, and also, once again, part of Anthos, which is really good. Once again, this franchise not only catered to me because of the vocals, but also because of the parallels with other projects that I enjoy a whole lot, really. And in this case, when it came to the vocals, it was kind of impressive. I feel that when it comes to the most complete vocal lineup, BAD SKUNK really impresses because what do you mean you have Makoto Furukawa, Kentaro Kumagai, both 2 really deep voices, as well as Shunichi Toki, a vocal chameleon, Yoshiki Nakajima, another vocal chameleon, Kohei Yamasaki, who has been impressing a ton, and then Yuichiro Umehara, who has been the biggest surprise in the last decade in terms of vocal evolution, because he went from not knowing how to sing to being one of the most interesting singers at the moment, also with a super smooth, deep voice. This lineup is unbelievably good. It's jam-packed with quality. Not to say that GOAT isn't, but when you look at BAD SKUNK, you will recognize most of the names from being big in other 2D music projects, whereas with GOAT, the things are slightly different because you have some names that are not as active in 2D music or not as known for their vocal prowess when it comes to their performances. In this case, BAD SKUNK really threw it out of the park in terms of the performances and the quality on paper, and then it reflected into their performances. Then, one thing that I like to say here is when you listen to the music in the Grey Sheep franchise, you never know who is going to be on vocals. Whereas the first 2 episodes, episode 1 and 2, you had all the members at that moment that were part of each group performing the songs. Starting from episode 3, there are some members that don't perform in some songs but perform in others. This creates a different dynamic in which you don't have all members singing the same song and you have different pairings depending on each song that you get. Which is really interesting. It keeps you on your toes once again because you don't know what to expect on the vocals. Are we getting Makoto Furukawa and Yuichiro Umehara in the same song and it's going to blow your mind? Probably, probably not. You don't know. Are we going to get Seiichiro Yamashita and Kentito in the same song? We don't know, because things shift around, and it is really interesting to see that shift around in terms of the vocals, and you just cannot expect what you are going to get until they announce that this is a song featuring vocal A, B, and C, and D is not going to perform this song, but D is going to perform, for example, the B-side in this CD. This is really, really interesting in terms of shifting things around, because when you think about a 2D group, you think, these 3 or 4 member group is going to perform all the songs together. They are never going to have one member sitting out from one performance. It makes no sense. But in this case, it is really interesting and it actually makes sense to have some members joining in some songs and not joining some songs. It works. It really works. And I feel that seeing as we have a really strong story in here in which characters are always busy in some capacity, it makes sense for some characters to be present and some characters to not be present. I like this dynamic. This keeps me excited because whenever I press play to review a CD by Grey Sheep, any of the two groups, I never know what I'm going to get there. Although I'm expecting, and now even the music genres, I cannot expect them because they may shift those around. And this is that unpredictability. It keeps things interesting and engaging, and especially when well done, which is the case, it keeps things really, really interesting. And this is another point in which Grey Sheep actually stands out for me, and honestly, it's really impressive how they do this and how they do this so well. You can find their music on streaming platforms for sure, so they are on Spotify, which is the platform that I use to review their music, but also on YouTube Music, so you don't have any excuses to not check their music out. I would love to know, of course, in the comments if you enjoy their music, but let's go through this outro. So this was my excitement about Grey Sheep, because I know that Grey Sheep is not talked about enough. I know that I love Grey Sheep, but I barely talk about it, which is weird because I usually ramble about the projects that I like. But I noticed that I've been reviewing Grey Sheep's music because I had a lot of music of theirs in my backlog, and I really love this franchise. While it is a franchise that I don't follow as passionately as I follow, for example, the Dear Vocalist franchise or the Tsuki Pro franchise, because those two are my all-time favorite ones, this is still a franchise that I love a ton. But yeah, I'm super excited about this project. I want to see and hear more music from them. I want you to actually find this project interesting, to fall in love with it, to share with me what you like about it. So for that, you have the comment section in this episode, so feel free to share with me what you like about this project. If you have never checked it, please go check it and take it as your homework in some capacity. Go check it out and at least episode 1, and tell me what you liked about the project, or if you didn't like, what didn't click with you, because that's also a really interesting way to look at music, for example, because I will talk always from the perspective of these clicked with me, but there's always that time in which something doesn't click with you, and sometimes it is because of the tone, sometimes it is because of the vocals, sometimes it is because you don't like the story, or you are not feeling the story, or you don't even like the music genres that they are exploring. So it would be interesting to see both what you like as well as what you don't like as much, but still on a positive note, because we are not here spreading hate or dislike in any capacity. This here was all from me about Grey Sheep. Although I feel that I just really talked surface level about this project, I could dive into both groups at least with more intensity if I wanted, but I'm not going to do that, otherwise we have a long ass episode and we don't want that here. So I'm going to keep this short, and I would love to, of course, get your comments about this project, to know what you like about it, if you know about the project, and if you haven't checked it, this is your homework. Go check the songs on Spotify or YouTube Music and let me know if you enjoyed their music. This is all from me. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I'll see you guys in the next one.